I am Anna Marie, 26 years old, and until last month, I thought putting up with my family's favoritism toward my sister was just part of life. My parents always treated Stephanie like royalty while I was the afterthought. But everything changed at JFK Airport when my dad slapped me across the face for refusing to carry my sister's extra bags. Their cruel laughter, as Stephanie suggested I sit with the janitors, was the final straw. If you are watching this now, drop a comment letting me know where you are from. Hit the like button and subscribe to see how I finally stood up for myself after years of mistreatment. Growing up in suburban Boston, I was always in Stephanie's shadow. She is 2 years younger than me, but somehow she became the center of our family universe from the moment she was born. My parents, Harold and Diana, never made any effort to hide their preference. When Stephanie won a participation ribbon in her third-grade spelling bee, my parents took her out for ice cream and put the ribbon on the refrigerator. When I was valedictorian of my high school class, they skipped my graduation speech because Stephanie had a stomachache that mysteriously disappeared once they got home. This pattern continued through our entire childhood. Stephanie's room was painted and redecorated whenever she wanted a change. Mine stayed the same pale yellow from age 8 until I left for college. Stephanie got a car for her 16th birthday. I had to work part-time at the local grocery store to save up for a used Honda that constantly broke down. Anna Marie, you need to understand that your sister is more sensitive than you, my mother would say whenever I tried to point out the unfairness. You are so independent and capable. Stephanie needs more support. And that became my identity in our family. I was the capable one who needed nothing while Stephanie was delicate and required constant attention and resources. The reality was that Stephanie had learned early on that throwing tantrums and creating drama got her what she wanted. She became increasingly entitled because my parents never set boundaries with her. Despite the lack of support at home, I excelled academically. I worked hard to earn scholarships to pay for college while my parents paid Stephanie's full tuition. I studied computer science and put in extra hours doing internships that my classmates avoided. By the time I graduated, I had job offers from 3 different tech companies. I accepted a position at a growing software company in New York City, moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, and began building my career. Over the next 4 years, I worked my way up from junior developer to senior software engineer. My most recent promotion put me in charge of a team developing security protocols for banking apps. The job came with a substantial raise and required frequent travel to meet with clients. Meanwhile, Stephanie bounced between majors in college before settling on communications. After graduation, she moved back home with our parents while looking for a job that was worthy of her talents. 6 months later, she landed an entry-level marketing position through one of my father's business connections. She complained constantly about the work being beneath her, but still expected praise for the most basic accomplishments. Despite my professional success, family gatherings remained unchanged. Thanksgiving dinners were dominated by discussions of Stephanie's latest minor achievement or dating drama. My parents asked perfunctory questions about my work before turning their attention back to Stephanie. I learned to answer briefly and deflect, knowing that detailed explanations about my projects would be met with glazed eyes and quick subject changes. Family comes first. Anna Marie was my parents' constant refrain whenever they expected me to drop everything for Stephanie. When she needed help moving to her new apartment, I took 2 days off work and drove 3 hours to help, only to find that she had barely packed and expected me to do most of the work. When she broke up with her boyfriend last year, I was expected to let her crash at my apartment for 2 weeks, during which she invited friends over without asking and left the place a mess. Each time I tried to establish boundaries, I was made to feel selfish. "Why are you being so difficult?" my father would ask. "She is your sister. That is what family does." The irony was that these family obligations only seemed to apply to me. When I had pneumonia last winter and asked if Stephanie could bring me some soup and medicine, she was too busy with a work happy hour. My parents said I should order delivery and not bother my sister with my problems. Over time, I developed a protective shell. I became less forthcoming about my achievements and challenges. I built a support network of close friends who celebrated my wins and helped me through hard times. I dated occasionally but found it difficult to let people get close, always anticipating that I would eventually be found lacking and abandoned for someone more exciting or demanding. By my 26th birthday, I had created a life I was proud of. I had a job I loved, a comfortable one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, an emergency fund, and even some investments. I had achieved all of this with minimal support from my family, yet I still found myself seeking their approval in ways that made me feel pathetic. When my mother called to discuss the family vacation to Hawaii that had been planned for months, I felt the familiar mix of hope and dread. Part of me still wanted to believe that this time would be different, that my parents would finally see me as an equal to Stephanie. The other part knew exactly what to expect, but I agreed to go anyway. Some habits are hard to break, and hoping for my parents' recognition was the hardest one of all. The Hawaii trip had been on the calendar for 6 months, supposedly to celebrate my father's 55th birthday. In reality, it coincided with Stephanie completing her first year at her marketing job, which my parents considered a remarkable achievement deserving of a tropical vacation. I had arranged to take 8 days off work, shifting client meetings and delegating projects to my team members. My boss had been understanding, but emphasized that I needed to be reachable in case of emergencies. I had even completed 2 weeks' worth of work in advance, staying late and working weekends to ensure nothing would fall through the cracks during my absence. "Are you sure you cannot stay longer?" my mother asked during our weekly phone call 2 weeks before the trip. Stephanie managed to get 2 full weeks off. "We could have so much more family time if you would make the effort." I explained again about my work responsibilities. "The company is paying for my international data plan so I can check emails while we are there. That is already a big accommodation." "I suppose your job is important to you," she said with a sigh that clearly communicated her disappointment. "At least you will be with us for the main celebration." The original plan had been straightforward: 5 nights at a resort on Maui with a day trip to Honolulu. We would have some group activities, but also time for individual exploration. I had researched hiking trails and booked myself a surf lesson, looking forward to at least some enjoyment during the trip. A week before our departure, Stephanie called to inform me that she had changed some of the plans. "Mom and Dad gave me their credit card to book some excursions," she announced proudly. "I scheduled us for a group snorkeling tour on Tuesday, the day you wanted to go hiking. And I got us spa appointments for Thursday when you were planning your surf lesson." "Stephanie, I already paid a deposit for that surf lesson," I protested. "And I was really looking forward to the hike." "Well, cancel it," she said dismissively. "The family activities I planned are more important." Mom and Dad agree. Plus, I got us matching outfits for the luau dinner. "I will bring yours so you do not have to pack it." I bit my tongue, knowing from experience that pushing back would only lead to being labeled difficult and selfish. I canceled my surf lesson, losing the $50 deposit, and resigned myself to following Stephanie's itinerary. 3 days before the trip, my team encountered a security issue with one of our banking clients. I spent 48 hours straight working with my developers to patch the vulnerability, finally resolving it at 2 a.m. the day of our flight. I caught a few hours of sleep before dragging myself out of bed to finish packing. Our flight was scheduled for 11:30 in the morning from JFK. My parents and Stephanie were driving in from Boston and would meet me at the airport. I arrived early, checked in online, and texted them my location near the security checkpoint. They arrived an hour later than planned, with my father looking stressed and my mother trying to calm a visibly agitated Stephanie. "The traffic was terrible," my mother explained, and then Stephanie realized she forgot her favorite sandals, so we had to turn around. I nodded, unsurprised by the chaos that seemed to follow my sister everywhere, but what did surprise me was the amount of luggage they had. My father was pushing a cart loaded with 5 large suitcases, while my mother wheeled 2 more. Stephanie carried only her designer purse. "Is all of this ours?" I asked, knowing I had packed just 1 checked bag and a carry-on. "Stephanie could not decide what to bring," my mother explained fondly. "She wanted to have options." As we approached the check-in counter, I saw my father grimace at the weight of the cart. He was not a young man anymore, and pushing all that luggage clearly strained him. "Let me help with that, Dad," I offered, taking one of the suitcases from the cart. "Take another one, too," he instructed, pointing to the largest bag. "And grab those 2 from your mother." I looked at Stephanie, who was scrolling through her phone, completely uninvolved in the luggage situation. "Stephanie should take some too," I suggested. "There is a lot here." My sister looked up briefly. "I am wearing heels," she said, as if that explained everything. "And I need to check us in on social media. You do it." I felt the familiar frustration rising, but reminded myself that we had not even started the vacation yet. I will take one more, I compromised, taking a second bag from my mother. But I already have my own luggage to manage. My father frowned but said nothing as we made our way to the check-in counter. The airline attendant looked at the pile of luggage with raised eyebrows. That will be $300 in excess baggage fees, she informed us after weighing everything. My father reached for his wallet, but Stephanie intercepted. Daddy, remember you said you would use your miles to cover any extra fees you promised. My father nodded wearily and presented his frequent flyer card along with his credit card. The attendant processed everything and began tagging the bags. Now we need to get through security, my mother said, checking her watch. We do not have much time before boarding. As we walked away from the counter, my father suddenly stopped and looked at me. Anna Marie, take these boarding passes and go secure us good seats together. Your mother and I will take Stephanie to get something to eat. She is getting hungry, and you know how she gets. I did know. Stephanie became exceptionally unpleasant when hungry, a trait my parents had accommodated her entire life. The seats are already assigned, I pointed out, looking at the boarding passes. And I have not had breakfast either. I was up until 2 a.m. finishing a work emergency. Your work can wait, my mother said dismissively. Family comes first. We need you to go through security and make sure everything is set up properly for our boarding. You know, Stephanie gets anxious in crowds. I looked at my sister, who was now complaining loudly about the airport food options. Then I looked down at the pile of carry-on bags at my feet, which apparently I was also expected to manage through security. After years of this treatment, something inside me began to shift. The lack of sleep, the stress from work, and the blatant unfairness of the situation crystallized into a moment of clarity. But I was not quite ready to act on it yet. Little did I know that moment was coming sooner than I expected. After reluctantly agreeing to go through security first, I found myself juggling 3 carry-on bags plus my own backpack. The security line was long, and I could feel the beginning of a tension headache forming behind my eyes. I had taken only 2 aspirin and a large coffee to combat my exhaustion from the work emergency, and it was not enough. 20 minutes later, my family appeared, Stephanie holding a smoothie and a shopping bag from one of the airport boutiques. She had apparently had time not only for food but also for shopping while I waited in the security line with all our things. Did you get good seats for us? My father asked immediately. The seats are pre-assigned, I repeated, showing him the boarding passes again. I saved us spots in the security line, but they are calling our boarding group now. We need to go. As we approached the security checkpoint, a TSA agent reminded everyone to have boarding passes and identification ready. I fumbled with the multiple bags, trying to retrieve my ID from my wallet. I cannot believe how disorganized you are. Anna Marie, Stephanie complained loudly. You are going to make us miss our flight. I bit back a retort as I placed the bags on the conveyor belt and walked through the scanner. Once on the other side, I began collecting all the items and returning electronics to their proper bags. Hurry up, my father urged, even though he had only his own items to manage. The flight starts boarding in 15 minutes. I rushed to gather everything, accidentally dropping Stephanie's tablet in the process. It was in a protective case and fell only a few inches onto the rubberized floor mat, but Stephanie gasped as if I had thrown it off a building. Oh my God, Anna Marie. That is brand new, Dad. Did you see how careless she is being with my stuff? My father shot me a disapproving look. Be more careful with your sister's things. By the time we reached our gate, boarding had already begun. We joined the line, and I noticed my arms were aching from carrying all the bags. When we reached the gate agent, there was a problem with Stephanie's boarding pass. Apparently, she had been randomly selected for additional screening but had bypassed the marked security lane. This will just take a minute, the agent assured us, calling over a TSA officer. This is ridiculous, Stephanie declared loudly. Do you know who our father is? We cannot be delayed like common people. Our father was a mid-level executive at an insurance company. Not exactly a VIP, but he puffed up at Stephanie's words. My daughter is right. This is unacceptable. We have a connection to catch. We did not have a connection. It was a direct flight to Maui. The gate agent remained professional but firm. It will only take a few minutes, sir. It is standard procedure. While Stephanie was taken aside for the additional screening, the agent suggested the rest of us could board to save time. My parents refused to go without Stephanie, but insisted I should board and save their overhead bin space. Take all the carry-ons, my father instructed, piling Stephanie's designer backpack on top of the bags I was already carrying. Make sure you get good bin space above our seats. I stood there, now expected to carry 5 bags onto the plane. I cannot physically carry all of these, I said, my voice strained. I already have more than my share. Stop being difficult, my mother hissed. Just do what your father asks. Stephanie needs her things accessible during the flight. I looked at the mountain of bags and then at my parents' unsympathetic faces. Something inside me finally snapped. Not in an angry way, but in a moment of pure clarity. I carefully set down Stephanie's backpack and another small bag. I have my bag and one of Stephanie's, I said calmly. That is already more than fair. I am not a porter. My father's face darkened. Pick those up right now. We do not have time for your selfishness. It is not selfish to have limits, I replied, surprised at how steady my voice was. Stephanie is capable of carrying her own things. How dare you, my father growled, stepping toward me. After everything we have done for you. I stood my ground, though my heart was racing. What exactly have you done for me that you have not done tenfold for Stephanie? The question hung in the air for a moment. Several nearby passengers were watching now, uncomfortable at the obvious tension. My father glanced around, seemingly aware of the audience, and lowered his voice. Pick up those bags now, he ordered through clenched teeth. No, I said simply. What happened next seems surreal even now. My father's hand flew up and he slapped me across the face. The sound echoed in the crowded gate area, and I staggered back, my cheek stinging from the impact. A collective gasp went up from the people around us. Harold, my mother exclaimed, though her tone held more concern about the public scene than about me being struck. I stood frozen, my hand to my cheek, shock radiating through my body. In 26 years, my father had never hit me. I had been neglected, overlooked, and treated as less important than my sister, but never physically harmed. Stephanie chose that moment to return from her screening, taking in the scene with a smirk. What did Anna-Marie do now? She asked, as if I was always the problem. When no one immediately answered, she noticed the bags on the floor and rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh my God, is she refusing to help again? So typical. Well, she can sit with the janitors on the plane for all I care. My mother, instead of defending me, actually laughed at this. Stephanie, you are too much. Then she turned to me, her expression hardening. Anna-Marie, just do what we ask. She is family. You are just being a burden right now. Just being a burden. The words echoed in my head, crystallizing decades of feeling like an outsider in my own family. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. I was done. A kind-looking older woman stepped forward from the boarding line. Are you okay, dear? She asked me quietly. I nodded, though I was anything but okay. Security, she called loudly, waving toward a uniformed airport officer. This young woman was just assaulted. My father's face paled as the security officer approached. There has been a misunderstanding, he said quickly. A family disagreement, that is all. The officer looked at me questioningly. I touched my cheek, which was still burning from the slap. I could press charges. I could create a scene that would likely end with my father being detained and our vacation ruined. But in that moment, I realized I did not want revenge. I wanted freedom. I am fine, I told the officer, but I will not be traveling with my family today. Anna-Marie, do not be ridiculous, my mother hissed. Get on the plane right now. I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time, seeing her not as my mother who might someday love me properly, but as a woman who had made her choices long ago. No, I said simply. I will not. I picked up my own backpack, leaving all of their bags on the floor, and walked away. Behind me, I could hear Stephanie's indignant voice. So, we have to carry our own bags now. This is just perfect. I did not look back. Walking away from my family at the gate, my cheek still stinging from my father's slap, I found myself in a strange state of calm clarity. The shock had given way to something else, a feeling I couldn't immediately identify. It took me several minutes of walking aimlessly through the terminal to recognize it relief. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary and held it despite the consequences. My father had shown his true colors in front of dozens of witnesses, and nothing could undo that moment of truth. I found a quiet corner near a window overlooking the tarmac and sat down to collect my thoughts. My hands were shaking slightly, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I pulled out my phone and saw multiple missed calls and angry texts already piling up. Dad, get back here right now. Mom, stop this childish behavior immediately. Everyone is staring. Stephanie, way to ruin everything as usual. Mom and Dad are so upset. I silenced my phone and put it away. They would be boarding soon, and I needed to decide what to do next. I could go home to my apartment, pour myself a glass of wine, and spend the next week enjoying the solitude. It was a tempting thought. But as I watched a plane take off heading west into the blue sky, another idea formed. Why should I miss out on a Hawaiian vacation just because my family was toxic? I had worked hard, saved my money, and arranged time off work. I deserved this trip. I opened the airline's app on my phone and checked my frequent flyer account. I had been traveling for work regularly and had accumulated a substantial number of miles. Enough, I discovered with growing excitement, to upgrade my economy ticket to first class on the same flight. With a few taps, I confirmed the upgrade. A sense of rebellious glee bubbled up inside me as I imagined my family searching the economy cabin for me in vain. Then I remembered that they might cause a scene or try to reach first class to confront me during the flight. To avoid that possibility, I headed to the customer service desk and explained that I had a family situation and needed to ensure certain passengers would not be informed of my new seat assignment. The agent, noticing my still reddened cheek, was remarkably understanding. She flagged my reservation with a note that my seating information should not be disclosed to other passengers, even family members. "Would you like to board early too?" she offered kindly. "I can arrange that." I accepted gratefully, then realized I had over an hour before boarding would begin. On impulse, I decided to use my new first-class status to access the airline's lounge. I had never been inside one before, and was pleasantly surprised by the calm atmosphere, comfortable seating, and complimentary refreshments. Finding a quiet corner, I ordered a sparkling water and a light sandwich. As I ate, I began to process what had just happened and what it meant. My father had hit me in public. My mother and sister had laughed at me and called me a burden. These were not the actions of people who valued me. My phone continued to vibrate with incoming messages. I finally checked them again. "Mom, the gate agent will not tell us your seat assignment. What did you tell them?" "Dad, this is completely unacceptable behavior. You are embarrassing this family." "Stephanie, they are making me carry my own bags. This is your fault." The last message made me laugh out loud, drawing curious glances from nearby lounge guests. Imagine that Stephanie having to carry her own bags like an actual adult. Then came a different kind of message. "Dad's security is questioning me because some busybody reported the incident. This could get serious, Anna Marie. I need you to come back and tell them it was nothing." So now he needed my help. Interesting how that worked. I considered my options carefully, then typed a response. "Me, I will not press charges if you leave me alone for the remainder of this trip. Do not attempt to contact me in Hawaii. I will reach out when I am ready." There was a long pause before his reply came through. "Dad, fine." Just that one word, but it was enough. I had won my first boundary battle. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb mode and closed my eyes, allowing myself a moment of peace. An announcement for my flight brought me back to the present. I gathered my things and headed to the gate where first-class passengers were already boarding. The same gate agent who had witnessed the earlier incident did a double take when she saw me in the first-class line, then gave me a subtle thumbs up as she scanned my boarding pass. "Enjoy your flight, Miss Johnson," she said warmly. I thanked her and walked down the jetway, feeling as though I was walking into a new chapter of my life. Settling into my spacious first-class seat felt like entering a different world. The flight attendant greeted me by name and offered a pre-departure beverage. I chose champagne, something I rarely indulged in, but that seemed appropriate for this moment of personal rebellion. As I sipped the bubbly drink, I watched economy passengers boarding. Eventually, I spotted my family making their way down the aisle. My father looked tense, my mother worried, and Stephanie irritated as they struggled with their carry-on bags. They scanned the faces of passengers as they moved through the cabin, clearly looking for me. I sank lower in my seat, though. The first-class curtain largely shielded me from their view. A flight attendant approached them when they lingered too long near the front of the plane. "Can I help you find your seats?" she asked. "We are looking for another passenger," my father explained. My daughter. She should be on this flight. I am sorry, sir, but I cannot disclose information about other passengers, the attendant replied professionally. Please proceed to your assigned seats. We need to complete boarding. Reluctantly, they moved on. I released the breath I had not realized I was holding and took another sip of champagne. The woman seated next to me, elegantly dressed with silver-streaked dark hair, gave me a curious look. Family trouble, she asked in a low voice. I hesitated, then nodded. There was something about her direct yet kind manner that invited confidence. I am Jennifer, she said, offering her hand. Marketing executive and frequent flyer extraordinaire. Anna-Marie, I replied, shaking her hand. Software engineer and family refugee, I guess. She laughed at that, a warm, genuine sound. Been there, she said. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who should support you the most. As the plane taxied and took off, Jennifer and I fell into conversation. She was heading to Hawaii for a business conference, but planned to extend her stay for some personal time. I found myself sharing the basic outline of what had happened at the airport, somewhat surprised at my own openness with a stranger. So now I am flying first class to Hawaii, where I will apparently be vacationing alone, I concluded, as the flight attendant served our meals. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. You know, I had a similar moment with my mother when I was about your age, she said. She had always favored my brother, much like your parents with your sister. It all came to a head at my cousin's wedding when she expected me to give up my +1 so my brother could bring both his girlfriend and his best friend. What did you do? I asked, genuinely curious. I went to the wedding with my date and sat at a different table, she said simply. My mother did not speak to me for 3 months, which was honestly the most peaceful 3 months of my adult life up to that point. We both laughed, and I felt a strange kinship with this woman, who understood family dynamics so similar to my own. The hardest part is the guilt, I admitted. Even now, part of me feels like I should go find them when we land and apologize. That is how they keep control, Jennifer said wisely. They install those guilt buttons early, and they know exactly when to push them. But ask yourself this. If a friend treated you the way your family does, would you keep that friend in your life? It was a perspective I had never fully considered before. The truth was, I would have cut ties with anyone else who treated me with such consistent disregard. The problem is that we are taught that family relationships are somehow exempt from the basic respect we expect in other relationships, Jennifer continued. That is nonsense. If anything, family should treat you better than strangers, not worse. As our conversation deepened, I found myself sharing more details about my life and relationship with my family. Jennifer listened attentively, asking insightful questions that made me reflect on patterns I had never fully articulated before. It sounds like you have been the family scapegoat, she observed. That is a difficult role to break out of because the entire family system is structured around it. When you refuse to play your assigned part, everyone else gets uncomfortable because it forces them to confront the dysfunction. So what happens now? I asked. I cannot avoid them forever. No, but you can redefine the relationship on your terms, she said. The key is consistency. Once you set a boundary, you have to maintain it even when it gets hard. And it will get hard. They will pull out all the stops to get you back in line. The hours of the flight passed quickly in this deep conversation. Jennifer shared her own journey of setting boundaries with difficult family members and how it had ultimately improved her life dramatically. She had built a successful career, cultivated meaningful friendships, and eventually even repaired some family relationships, but on healthier terms. The irony is that the only relationships that healed were the ones where I was willing to walk away completely, she said. Once they realized I was serious about requiring basic respect, some of them stepped up. Others did not, and I had to accept that. As we began our descent into Maui, Jennifer reached into her purse and handed me her business card. If you need someone to talk to during your solo vacation, give me a call. My conference does not start until Wednesday. I thanked her sincerely, tucking the card into my wallet. The plane landed smoothly, and as a first-class passenger, I was among the first to disembark. I moved quickly through the terminal toward baggage claim, knowing I needed to retrieve my suitcase and leave before my family appeared. Fortune was on my side. My bag was among the first to emerge on the carousel. I grabbed it and headed straight for the rental car counters. I had not planned to rent a car, originally expecting to share transportation with my family, but now I needed my own vehicle. Within 20 minutes, I had secured a compact car and was inputting the address of a hotel into the GPS. I had booked it hastily in the airport using my phone, a different resort from where my family would be staying, using points from my credit card rewards program. As I drove away from the airport toward my new accommodations, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. There was anxiety about the confrontation that would inevitably come. There was lingering hurt from the awful things my family had said and done. But overriding it all was a surprising sense of freedom and possibility. For the first time in my life, I was on a vacation where no one would criticize my choices, dismiss my preferences, or expect me to put their needs above my own. That night, as I sat on the balcony of my hotel room watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean, I sent a single text to my family group chat. I am safe. I need space. Please respect that. Then I turned off my phone and allowed myself to fully inhabit this moment of hard-won peace. For the first 2 days in Hawaii, I kept my phone turned off, immersing myself in the peaceful atmosphere of my beachfront hotel. I swam in the ocean each morning, hiked to a nearby waterfall, and read books on my balcony. The absence of family drama felt like a luxury more extravagant than the plush resort accommodations. On the third morning, I finally powered on my phone, bracing myself for the barrage of messages that would surely await me. I was not disappointed. There were 37 missed calls, 63 text messages, and numerous voicemails, all from my family members. The texts ranged from my father's angry demands to my mother's guilt-inducing laments to Stephanie's self-centered complaints. As I scrolled through them, I noticed a progression: anger to worry to bargaining to more anger. The most recent ones had a desperate quality. Mom, please just let us know you are okay. Your father is beside himself with worry. Dad, this has gone on long enough, Anna Marie. We need to talk. Call immediately. Stephanie, the resort keeps messing up our orders, and Dad is in a terrible mood. This vacation is a disaster, and it is all your fault. I considered my options. I could continue to ignore them for the remainder of the trip, but that felt like avoidance rather than boundary setting. I needed to face them directly and establish new terms for our relationship moving forward. I typed a brief direct message to my father. I am staying at the Royal Hawaiian Resort. I will meet you all for dinner at the Oceanside restaurant there at 7 tonight. I am safe and have been enjoying my vacation. His reply came almost instantly. We will be there. I spent the rest of the day preparing myself mentally for the confrontation ahead. I swam laps in the hotel pool, trying to work off my nervous energy, then treated myself to a massage to calm my frayed nerves. By the time I dressed for dinner, I felt centered and resolved. I arrived at the restaurant early and requested a table on the outdoor terrace with some privacy. The hostess, perhaps sensing my tension, selected a corner table partially screened by tropical plants, but with a stunning ocean view. At exactly 7, my family appeared at the restaurant entrance. They spotted me immediately, and I watched their expressions shift as they approached. My father looked stern but controlled, my mother anxious, and Stephanie sullen. Anna Marie, my father said stiffly as they reached the table. No hug, no warm greeting, just my name pronounced like a judgment. Thank you for coming, I replied, calmly gesturing for them to sit. An uncomfortable silence fell as they took their seats. A server appeared immediately to take drink orders, providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. Once the server departed, my mother burst out. How could you put us through this? We have been worried sick. I texted that I was safe, I pointed out, and Dad hit me in public. I needed space to process that. It was barely a tap, my father dismissed, though he could not quite meet my eyes. You were being difficult and causing a scene. I refused to carry Stephanie's excessive bags. That hardly justifies physical assault. My father flushed red. Do not be so dramatic. It was a family matter that you have blown completely out of proportion. A family matter, I repeated slowly. Is that how you justify it? Would you have hit one of your employees if they refused to carry something? Would you have hit a stranger? Or is it only acceptable to hit me because I am your daughter? He had no ready answer for that. Stephanie, apparently tired of not being the center of attention, jumped in. Do you have any idea what you put us through? Security questioned Dad for like an hour, and I had to lug my bags through the whole airport. My shoulders still hurt. I looked at my sister, seeing her perhaps for the first time, not as the favored golden child, but as someone stunted by our parents' indulgence. Stephanie, most adults carry their own bags. It is not an exceptional hardship. Well, you ruined the whole vacation, she pouted. Dad has been in a terrible mood, Mom keeps crying, and the resort lost our dinner reservation last night. I am sorry you have had a difficult time, I said genuinely, meaning it despite everything. That was not my intention. Then what was your intention? My mother demanded. To punish us, to embarrass us in front of everyone at the airport. The server returned with our drinks and took our dinner orders. When he left, I took a deep breath and decided to lay everything out clearly. My intention was to finally stand up for myself, I said quietly but firmly. For years, I have accepted being treated as less important than Stephanie. I have carried extra burdens both literally and figuratively while watching her receive preferential treatment in every situation. When Dad hit me and you both laughed and called me a burden, something broke inside me. I realized I deserve better from the people who are supposed to love me. We do love you, my mother protested. You have always been so independent and capable. We did not think you needed as much from us. Everyone needs love and support, Mom. Everyone needs to feel valued. I have achieved everything in my life despite your lack of support, not because of it. And that is a sad reality for all of us. My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. So you upgraded yourself to first class to teach us a lesson. Do you know how childish that seems? It was not about teaching you a lesson, I explained. It was about finally doing something for myself, prioritizing my own well-being for once, and honestly, it was wonderful. I met an interesting person, had a peaceful flight, and have been enjoying a drama-free vacation since then. While we have been miserable, Stephanie interjected. Thanks a lot. Your happiness is not my responsibility. I said the words, feeling revolutionary as they left my mouth, just as mine has never been yours. Our food arrived, temporarily halting the conversation. We ate in strained silence for several minutes before my mother tried again, her tone softer now. Anna Marie, we are family. Whatever issues we have, we should work through them together. Come back to our resort. Let us enjoy the rest of this vacation as we planned. I set down my fork and looked at each of them in turn. I will not be joining you at your resort. I have my own accommodations and I am comfortable there. I am happy to meet you for specific activities if we can agree on them in advance, but I need space from the family dynamic right now. This is ridiculous, my father exploded, his forced calm evaporating. We paid for this family vacation, and you are part of this family, whether you like it or not. Actually, I corrected him. I paid for my own flight, upgraded with my own miles, booked my own hotel with my own points, and rented my own car with my own credit card. I am an independent adult, not an accessory to this family to be controlled and manipulated. My mother began to cry, dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. I do not understand why you are being so cruel. We just want to be together as a family. Mom, setting boundaries is not cruelty. It is self-care. And right now, I need these boundaries to protect myself from further harm. Harm, my father scoffed. Such melodrama. One little slap after years of providing for you, and suddenly you are a victim. I felt a surge of anger but controlled it. Dad, you hit me in public because I refused to be Stephanie's personal porter. That is not acceptable under any circumstances. And it was just the most visible example of how this family treats me. If you cannot see that, then we have an even bigger problem than I thought. The rest of the dinner continued in this vein, with my parents alternating between guilt trips, anger, and occasional moments of seeming reflection. Stephanie mainly complained about how my actions had affected her vacation experience. I remained calm but firm, throughout refusing to be drawn into their emotional manipulations. When the check came, I insisted on paying for my own meal, another small act of independence that visibly irritated my father, who was accustomed to maintaining control through financial means. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, my mother made one last emotional appeal. Please, Anna Marie, just come back with us tonight. We can talk more in the morning. No, Mom. I have made my decision. I am open to meeting again during this trip, but only if everyone can respect my boundaries. That means no guilt trips, no pressure tactics, and absolutely no physical intimidation. I looked pointedly at my father as I said the last part. Fine, my father said tersely. Have it your way. but do not expect special treatment when you finally come to your senses. I almost laughed at the irony of his statement. Special treatment had never been something I had received from this family. I expect only basic respect, I replied. Nothing more, nothing less. We parted awkwardly without the usual hugs or affectionate farewells. As I watched them walk away, my mother glancing back several times with tearful eyes, I felt a complex mixture of sadness and liberation. This dinner had not resolved our deep-seated issues, but it had established a new paradigm. I had spoken my truth clearly and held my ground in the face of their collective pressure. Back in my hotel room, I called Jennifer, my first-class seatmate, and filled her in on the confrontation. "You did well," she assured me. "The first boundary conversation is always the hardest. It gets easier with practice." "They acted like I was being unreasonable and cruel," I said, still troubled by their reaction. "Of course they did," Jennifer replied. "You disrupted the family system they are comfortable with. That feels threatening to them. But you planted seeds tonight that might grow over time, especially with your parents. Your sister may take longer." I hoped she was right. Despite everything, I did love my family and wanted a relationship with them, just not the unhealthy one we had maintained for so long. "What now?" I asked her. "Now you enjoy the rest of your vacation on your terms," she said firmly. "The work you started tonight will continue when you get home. This is a marathon, not a sprint." After we hung up, I stepped out onto my balcony and listened to the sound of the waves breaking on the shore below. For the first time in my life, I felt truly independent, not just financially or physically, but emotionally. I had faced my family's disapproval and survived. Whatever happened next, I would face it from this new position of strength. The remainder of my Hawaiian vacation unfolded in ways I never could have anticipated. Free from family obligations and expectations, I discovered a side of myself that had been suppressed for years. I went snorkeling at Molokini Crater, watching colorful fish dart through coral formations. I hiked the Waihi Ridge Trail, marveling at the lush greenery and breathtaking valley views. I finally took that surf lesson I had originally booked, laughing as I repeatedly fell off the board before managing to ride a small wave all the way to shore. Each night, I returned to my hotel room pleasantly exhausted and deeply satisfied. I posted photos of my adventures on social media, something I rarely did, and was touched by the supportive comments from friends and colleagues. My family and I maintained a cautious distance. We met once more for a prearranged lunch 4 days after our initial confrontation. The atmosphere was strained but less combative than our dinner had been. My father was notably subdued, watching me with an expression I could not quite decipher. My mother made awkward attempts at normal conversation, asking about my activities with forced brightness. Stephanie remained self-absorbed but seemed less antagonistic. I encountered them accidentally one other time at a popular lookout point along the road to Hana. I had arrived early to avoid crowds and was preparing to leave when they pulled up in their rental car. We exchanged awkward greetings, and I noticed my father looking at me with an expression that almost resembled respect as I described the hidden waterfall hike I had just completed. "That sounds challenging," he commented, the first neutral remark he had made since our airport confrontation. It was, I acknowledged, but worth it for the view. A brief moment of connection flickered between us before Stephanie complained about the heat and diverted everyone's attention. I excused myself shortly after continuing my solo exploration of the island. On my last evening in Hawaii, as I watched the sunset from a quiet beach, I received a text message from my father. "Can we talk privately before your flight tomorrow?" I agreed to meet him for breakfast at a cafe near my hotel. When I arrived the next morning, he was already there, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down across from him. "Of course," I replied, curious about what had prompted this private meeting. He stirred his coffee unnecessarily, clearly uncomfortable. "I have been doing some thinking," he finally said, "about what happened at the airport. About a lot of things, actually." I waited, giving him space to continue at his own pace. "I was wrong to hit you," he said, the words seeming to cost him considerable effort. "There is no excuse for that, and I am sorry." "Thank you," I said simply. "I appreciate that." "Your mother and I have also been talking," he continued, "about the things you said at dinner, about how we have treated you compared to Stephanie." He paused, looking out the window at the palm trees swaying in the morning breeze. "I am not sure we can see it exactly the way you do, but we recognize that you have felt overlooked." It was not a complete acknowledgement of the favoritism I had experienced, but it was more reflection than I had ever heard from him before. The truth is, he continued, you have always been so capable, so self-sufficient. You never seemed to need us the way Stephanie did, but that does not justify taking you for granted. No, I agreed. It does not. I am not good at this, he admitted, gesturing vaguely. Talking about feelings, acknowledging mistakes. But I am trying to understand. That means a lot to me, Dad. We talked for nearly an hour, having the most honest conversation of our adult lives. He shared perspectives I had never considered about his own upbringing in a strict household where emotional expression was discouraged, about his fears of failing as a father, about the different challenges he perceived in raising each of his daughters. I shared my experiences too, the pain of constant comparison, the burden of being expected to be perpetually self-sufficient, the loneliness of achievement without recognition. He listened more attentively than he ever had before. We did not resolve everything in that one conversation, but we established a foundation for a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than authority and obedience. What happens when we go home? I asked as our meeting drew to a close. I cannot promise instant change, he said honestly. But I can promise to try, and to listen better when I fall short. We parted with a somewhat awkward but genuine hug, the first real embrace we had shared in years. My return flight to New York was another first-class experience courtesy of my frequent flyer miles. My family had an earlier flight to Boston, so we said our goodbyes at the hotel. My mother hugged me tearfully, whispering, I do love you, Anna Marie. I always have. Stephanie gave me a quick, perfunctory hug and immediately began complaining about having to repack her numerous bags. In the 6 months following our Hawaii trip, subtle but significant shifts occurred in our family dynamic. My father called me regularly awkward at first, but gradually more comfortable, showing interest in my work and life. My mother made efforts to balance her attention between Stephanie and me during our phone conversations, though old habits occasionally resurfaced. Stephanie remained the most resistant to change. At Thanksgiving, when I refused to rearrange my schedule to accommodate her last-minute change of plans, she accused me of being selfish. But instead of backing her as they would have in the past, our parents suggested that Stephanie adjust her expectations. Anna Marie has her own life and responsibilities, my father said, earning a shocked look from both Stephanie and me. Perhaps the most meaningful change came during a family dinner celebrating my 27th birthday. As we finished our meal, my father raised his glass in a toast. To Anna Marie, he said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional, whose strength and courage have made our family better. I am proud of the woman you have become. The words I had waited a lifetime to hear. Not every interaction with my family is perfect now. Old patterns sometimes reassert themselves, and I still maintain firm boundaries about what I will and will not accept. My relationship with Stephanie remains complicated, as she struggles to adjust to no longer being the unquestioned center of attention. But the power dynamic has fundamentally changed. I am no longer the overlooked daughter desperately seeking approval. I am a woman who knows her worth and requires respect. Some days that feels like the greatest upgrade of all, far more valuable than any first-class seat. Looking back on that day at the airport, I realized that my father's slap painful, as it was ultimately gave me the clarity I needed. Sometimes it takes a moment of crisis to break patterns that years of subtle manipulation have established. The path to healing is rarely straight or simple, but each step toward authentic self-worth is a step in the right direction. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? What helped you find the courage to stand up for yourself? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to see more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your voice. Remember that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is necessary for genuine relationships built on mutual respect. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the strength to honor your own worth in all your relationships.